Trashy Romance by Jay Wilburn. Filth Johnson laid on his back in a thin spread of garbage over loose, wet dirt. He was uncharacteristically clean. He and Jewel had found a stash of clothes still in the plastic, so he wore denim pants and jacket with a crisp black t-shirt. It was no substitute for armor, that's what Jewel told him, and as always she was right. Something oily and warm seeped through the back of his pants legs. That wasn't a thing he normally noticed, but wearing clean clothes made it more obvious. Filth brought his finger up to his lips and hissed out a short shush to the sky. Even the sky was clear and clean today, nearly blue in this unusual break in the smog. His fingers tasted like syrup and earwax. It could have been from anything, really. Putting on new clothes didn't suddenly wash him up all pristine and pure. The marauders closed in on him from all sides at a casual pace. At least they appeared to be out of projectiles, but that wouldn't matter much now that they were going to get close enough to beat him to death on the ground. He rolled to the side and pulled one fellow off his feet at the bends in his knees. Instead of knocking the guy backward and away, Filth pulled the attacker down on top of him. He chose this guy because he was big and because he was carrying a bat instead of something sharp. To beat all, the bat didn't even have any spikes through it, nor was it wrapped in barbed wire the way the kids were doing these days. Filth balled up underneath the man's bulk. The big man tried to bite Filth at first, but only got a mouthful of greasy hair. After that, he tried to get off of him and take his naked bat with him, but Filth held on tight and wouldn't let the poor giant go. As Filth expected, the giant's friends wouldn't wait any longer, and they started trying to beat and chop their way through their own guy to get to Filth. The poor sucker screamed in Filth's face and ear. He let go of the bat, but still tried to flail away. The guy drooled on Filth's cheek. Some of the spittle blocked one of Filth's nostrils and trailed a little into his mouth. He licked it away from his teeth but couldn't taste the difference. The drool turned pink, and then the guy started coughing. That should be out. I need to fix that. Coughing out bloody spatter across Filth's face. Blades and bats with sharper points struck the ground around the edges of the big body. Filth tried to stay small, but he felt himself get nicked on one thigh, on the hip on the other side, and a deep slash above and behind one elbow. He wasn't hurt badly yet, but time wasn't on his side, and he didn't have much of a plan. The weapons started dropping around him, kicking up dust and crunching against crumbled plastic trash. The bodies collapsed on all sides of him as well. Filth had no good explanation for this. The guy on top reared up with blood painted down one side of his face. Instead of falling away from his many wounds, he grabbed up an axe and made to swing it into Filth's face. The guy wasn't about his simple bat anymore. Filth caught the handle and tried to wiggle out from under the giant, but now the guy wasn't interested in getting away. He bore his weight down and pushed the blade toward Filth's throat. The big man jarred, and all the strength went out of his attack. Filth watched the guy's eyes glaze over and his mouth go slack. The dead weight pressed down harder. Filth grunted and rolled hard to one side, getting the giant off of him. Filth scrambled to his feet, holding that silly little smooth bat. The giant had a thick arrow embedded in the base of his skull. Filth looked around to see all the others with arrows in their heads and necks as well. Some of them were still choking and thrashing as they finished dying, but not most. He scanned the rolling dunes of garbage and spotted Jewel Gunk atop one of the tallest of them in the middle distance. She waved at him with her bow and turned as she ran down the other side of the pile out of sight. He had signaled her to stay quiet. If she had, she could have been long gone before they were ever done with him. Of course, he would never let her sacrifice herself for him either. They might both die as a result of this mutual character flaw. The engines roared behind him, and the buggies made a little more buggies made of little more than open metal frames and roughshod motors bounded over the piles of garbage toward him. The spiked wheels threw busted plastic containers, molding clothes, and festering foodstuffs into the air. He turned and ran between the high garbage dunes that Jewel had topped a moment ago. As the buggies revved and buzzed behind him in pursuit, he realized he was carrying the naked bat and no other weapons. He had a selection of blades and several bludgeons to choose from all around a moment ago, but he stood around gawking, and now he just had this stupid bat. Of course, everyone who held all those great weapons had died. Some of them were still dying. Phil turned his head just before he put more piles of garbage between him and the pursuers. The spiked wheels tore right over the top of those fallen men, so no, they were all definitely dead now. He weaved between the dunes and out into the open ground again as the buggies turned through the paths quickly. He then cut through some tighter spaces, but the buggies ramped right over the top and closed the distance. Armored men hung onto the metal frames. They hooted and hollered as they waved their weapons at Filth. He found yet tighter spaces. Filth ran up the crumpled side of a doorless refrigerator. He had no idea what refrigerators used to be, but that's what everyone still called them. He ran across the rusted tops of 3 car chassis and then leapt far to the ground on the other side. A shiver of pain shot up from his ankle through the back of his leg. Filth cursed as he limped 3 staggering steps, but then took a normal stride, refusing to acknowledge the pain. He had no time to get hurt in a stupid way. He wanted to watch what happened, but needed to cross the open space to the next canyons of trash in a hurry. One buggy shot up the side of the refrigerator and flipped over. A guy hanging on the back and waving a bat wrapped in barbed wire broke his neck under the rolling vehicle. The others bailed and moved to turn over the buggy. It wasn't heavy and wouldn't be difficult. But the other drivers tore by without pause or regard. They snapped one guy's ankle and sent him tumbling into the sharp bits of trash, screaming in pain. Another tried to clear the path but was pulled under and run over by a half-dozen spiked wheels from 3 different buggies. There wasn't much of him left, so he died quietly. That was just fewer mouths to feed and fewer people to have to split any rewards with. Another buggy struck the rusted metal car head on and threw the rider forward to be killed instantly. The other vehicles cut to the right and left, tearing along the walls of loose garbage, with their rides nearly turned sideways. As they flew off the other side, the last vehicles fell level, but there was no ground to land on. They dumped into a deep ditch with sheer sides. One Filth had seen in time to jump clear of, nearly costing him his ankle. Not all of them died right away, but the unlucky survivors had too many broken bones to climb out. Filth ran on. He didn't hear the engines anymore, but that only made him feel marginally safer. As he slowed to squeeze between a radiator and a wiry rack of mattress springs, a woman's voice called, "Filth, wait up." He turned his head with a smile. "Jewel?" It wasn't Jewel. A big woman with lots of missing teeth swung her gnarly axe over her head to split him down the middle. He sliced himself pretty good as he stumbled through the narrow gap too quickly. She brought the axe down hard into the dirt where he had been standing less than a second ago. Filth rolled over and came up on his feet. She barreled through the obstruction, sending heavy piles. No, I want to say pipes. All right. Heavy pipes and squeaky springs flying. She swung across her body, and Filth tried to deflect, but she chopped through his bat and sent splinters scattering to the wind in all directions. Filth spit bits of wood out as he stumbled backward. It was a stupid weapon, not even wrapped in barbed wire. She stomped toward him, bringing the axe around for another attack. He turned to run, knowing that was all the time she would need to finish him off. 3 arrows punched into her right side, one after the other, climbing up her body. The one in her thigh dug in deep. It did not come out the other meaty side, but the arrowhead bulged dark like a malignant tumor. The second arrow punctured her side at the hip and scraped against bone. causing it not to go deep. The third arrow took her in the neck, but at an odd angle that didn't make it immediately clear how much damage was done. She hesitated, but only for a second. She continued her swing after that. Filth Johnson threw himself sideways and just avoided being cleaved. But there he was on the ground again, with no weapon and no plan. She brought the axe up yet again and heaved forward as if she weren't sprouting arrows like quills. A sword erupted from her mouth like a sharp magic tongue. It twisted, and the edges of the blade ground against her teeth. The arrow in her neck wiggled around as if it had come alive and was trying to dig itself out or burrow its way in deeper. The sword backed out of her mouth in 3 ungraceful lurches. As the big woman collapsed to her side, her axe spun out of her grasp. Filth rolled to the side, and the gnarly blade planted itself in the grimy dirt. The big woman hit the ground hard enough to shake the earth under Filth's back. Jewel Gunk withdrew her blade the rest of the way from the dead enemy. She fed it back through the loop on her belt at her hip without cleaning off the blood first. She set aside her bow and laid down on top of Filth. "You're not doing it so well today." He smiled up at her, smelling the familiar vinegary tang of her breath. He said, "I can't complain so far." She leaned down and they kissed warm and sticky. Her bloody hands smeared his throat and cheeks. Her fingertips painted his skin in swirls of red as she caressed him. She pulled away with a loop of shimmering saliva strung between their mouths. Taking up her bow and his hand, she pulled him to his feet again. He came in for another kiss, and she made no move to stop him. But then the high buzz of buggy engines whined through the air just beyond the mounds of garbage, concealing them for the moment. They took each other by the hand, and blood squeezed out like warm jelly around their interlaced fingers. Together they ran through the hills of trash to find a place where they could be together.